Afternoon, everybody. I'm really excited to hear from Liam today of what he's been developing regarding improving teaching and learning at All Saints Academy in Cheltenham. Um, the approach that he's been doing has been linked to research, and today he's able to explain the journey that he's been taking with the academy, how he's been empowering the staff, and the outcomes that he's achieved. So thank you very much, Liam, and over to you. You're on mute, Liam.
Rookie error. Nice to be with everybody this afternoon. Hope you're all very well. I'm going to share some slides now, which I know will be shared around more broadly later on. So you can use them as you see fit. Okay, so this is us. I'm Liam Wilkinson. Good afternoon. I'm Associate Principal at All Saints Academy in Cheltenham, which is an 11 to 18 academy just on the west of Cheltenham in Gloucestershire. I've led on teaching and learning in inverted commas for many years, really, at the academy, and I can honestly say that I've done this not always with the greatest clarity of purpose or strategy, and therefore making improvements stick in the classroom hasn't always been achieved. During the past 2 years, we've elevated this to be our central priority, and I'm going to share with you how we've done that today. One thing we realized really early on was we didn't have a teaching problem. We had a substantial consistency problem. We had strong practice in places, but because we had no shared teaching model, and that meant that was not consistent across the classrooms, and we couldn't always see or track it clearly. And I bet that sounds familiar to many of you here today, if you've been around schools for at least some time. So the challenges we faced, we had a few key challenges. First of all, our staff were starting from very different starting points, so providing the right support at the right time was not easy. The training needs of a novice and an expert teacher are clearly very different, so we had to plan to approach to offer a kind of mixed of direct instruction of new techniques, but with also some appropriate coaching at peer level too. And that was effective, but interestingly, actually, as the years progressed, we've moved away from the peer coaching model to a much more flat delivery model, replacing the coaching interactions with more sort of collaborative team contextualizing, and that's given people, I think, who are more experienced the opportunity to show leadership within their team, and it helps to build team accountability. So a bit of a sidetrack off of my speech already then, but you know, we've already started to make changes to these things as we go through, and I'll highlight a few more as we go. Secondly, the absence of the shared teaching model meant that we just didn't have a consistent way of assessing quality across the classrooms. Judgments would vary depending on the observer and on their mental models of what good teaching looked like, which meant that it was hard to give consistent and precise feedback to colleagues. We were also not giving feedback anywhere near enough and not regularly enough. So that was a challenge for us. And thirdly, we struggled to make to kind of see the big picture, to really understand whether our actions were making a difference over time. This was due to a variety of different sort of monitoring approaches that we took, which weren't easy to analyze in one way. So while we knew that improving teaching quality was the key driver for school improvement, we needed a better way to make that work more visible, more consistent and trackable. Our approach to improvement then. So in response to those challenges, we built a fairly structured approach to improving teaching. It had 4 main parts. There's more more to it, of course, there always is, but I've picked out 4 main areas. We've developed a clear teaching model, which is rooted in research. Here's what our teachers collaboratively produced. So you won't see all the detail. It's quite small, some of the writing, but you can get a flavour for what it is we're talking about here. It's not revolutionary, but it was. We started from having quite a patchy understanding of cognitive science across the school. So I spoke with all the staff, and we consulted on that, and it was sketchy at best. So what we did was we started by rooting everything in Daniel Willingham's cognitive load theory, which is pretty well held in terms of the cognitive science. So that was our starting point. We made sure that we were working from that place upwards. We then designed a very simple teaching model that would follow from that. So it would have steps built into it to make sure that it matched the stages of learning in the cognitive learning, the cognitive model that we were using from Willingham. There are other sections in here about preparation, reminders, and sort of it's almost a bit of an aid memoir for staff. So prompts on how various systems work as a teacher and how you might prepare for that. But below here, you can see at the bottom section, you've got the entrance routines, and then a mix of stages of learning and the types of teaching techniques that people should be using in those stages of learning, and then our exit routine. So all built around consistency of approach to try and make sure that we actually lessened the cognitive load for all of our staff in terms of planning and delivery, and also most crucially of all, of course, for our children, that they knew what to expect in lessons. So that's our model. We provided ongoing responsive training for our staff to be able to do that. So once we decided what we're going to do, we've got to enable people to do it. And this is, we chose to use the learning walkthroughs, the teaching walkthroughs rather, which is Sherrington and Cavaglioni's work, which I'm sure many of you will be aware of. We used them to provide the teaching methodology to make sure that the techniques we were using were codified, simple to follow, and gave us that reference point for consistency. We have also, and we did that through a series of teaching and learning community meetings. We have 3 per term, so pretty much every other Tuesday. We set out the term with the techniques that we're going to be working on that term, how to do it. We train with deliberate practice. We have 65 teachers in a room all doing this together, and then we break off into small teams to work on this, and then they come back. We then meet again in the middle of the term to update on how things are going and check in with some of the issues and problem solve, and then we meet again at the end of term to review how it's gone. So that's our teaching input. We also train our students on how to do this. So our students have a taught discrete lesson at the start of every term as well, taught by our teachers, which teaches them what the technique is, how they do their part of the technique, whether that be show me boards or whether that be think, pair, share or something like that. And we do it through teaching briefings and assembly type forum, and then we also have lots of prompts around on the TV screens around the school to remind students of what their part is, and again it's all codified to make the message really simple. Next, we needed to be able to regularly monitor the classroom impact of this training. And this is where SchooliP starts to make its first appearance, really. This is an example of part of one of the DDI forms, the developmental drop-in forms. So we designed this with SchooliP initially. They helped us to get that going. And we use it, all of our teachers in the school have every fortnight have a mini observation. One of their line managers normally will come and check in on how things are going. The teacher has ownership of that because they'll say, come to me for this lesson and this part of the time, start, middle or end, and I want you to notice this for me and give me feedback on it. So it's very much a kind of done with process, not done to. And the feedback's presented to them in this sort of format. You can see on the screen toward the bottom here, we've also been able to really quantify or clarify, I should say, what secure looks like in one of the skills. We have one of the skills that the teachers do is called pinpoint the positive. So this is what it looks like. We've got clarity and shared expectation so that it's easy to then evaluate that when it's seen and give feedback on it, which is precise to staff. And then that helps a lot of staff in terms of giving feedback, as I'm sure many people know that that's not always the easiest thing to do. So being really crystal clear on what something is and what something isn't helps you to provide precise feedback. So that's one of the things that we've done, which has been able to help us to capture what's happening. And then over time, we've had to evaluate and refine our implementation plan. We used internal review processes, and actually, very excitingly, we invited colleagues that we work with in local neighbouring schools to collaborate with us on this. We've had 2 visits. We've got a 3rd scheduled for later this year, where we get a group of head teachers and deputy head teachers from various places come in, and from primaries and secondaries and grammars, and they all come and take a look and tell us what they think. We tell them what we're trying to do, and then their feedback in conjunction with our feedback and what we've seen has already helped us make various amendments to our strategy this year. So so that's been fabulous and fundamental, really, in terms of moving things forward. What was missing then? Well, I've kind of touched into SchoolIP already, but what was missing was a system that would help us to join the dots, I suppose. We needed something that would allow us to support staff development, to try and build that consistency, and to give us a clear view of what was happening across the school, not just isolated moments. So where SchoolIP, this is where they really, has helped us to play a more significant role, and I hope there's more to do, actually, which I'll hint at in a while. So if I move forwards, what they've done is that support. We started making records of coaching conversations, so that was all recorded in the monitoring form systems of SchoolIP. What was nice about that is that it enabled them to be attached to the portfolios, so it was automatically connected to the appraisal system. So that was done. It's now morphed since into more of a personal reflection type record, but nevertheless, that's what we started doing, and that helped to structure the dialogue and made sure that it was consistently done, and that the time didn't slip by without people paying full attention to the things they were supposed to be working on. Secondly, in terms of consistency and accountability, again, the developmental drop-ins was really important. Having that clear and tight criteria meant that feedback was more accurate, more meaningful, and actually easier and quicker to give, and that was important too. We very rarely have much of a conversation after the DDI, only where there's a need on either party's behalf to kind of clarify something. Normally it's really precise written feedback, which is done quickly and efficiently that way. And therefore it's helped us to align all of those things together, because the SchoolIP we use for our appraisal objectives, it means that the monitoring forms that we capture through coaching and through DDIs, they're automatically connected to the objectives within the portfolio. So when line management meetings are held, it's easy to reference them, and it's all in one place, which has been a huge help for us, actually. And finally, it's helping us to monitor trends, and this is the next step for us, actually. So we're still not quite here with this, but what we've been doing so far, if I show you this, is an example of a report that's drawn out that shows for a week period all the DDIs that have happened have been kind of aggregated into a set of scores there, which gives us an indication on the various skills that people are working on in the classroom, which are named here. Pinpoint the positive, like you saw a moment ago. You can see that the bulk of our staff are at the secure stage. They've got developing is in the sort of orangey part. Red is where someone's is really struggling, and the grey is where it just hasn't been seen in the lesson, because in that might not have been the focus of the observation. So it gives us a bit of a view, and actually what you can do is you can click on this one and you can scroll, you can look down the page and you'll get the specific data that was recorded. So if you want to know who's secure in the moment in Pinpoint the Positive, you can, and you can see the written comments, or if you want it. So it helps you to delve into it, to diagnose further, and to look at where you might want to support. So that's been really helpful for us to gauge practice over time and the impact of the training that we're doing. So what's changed then in the school as a consequence of this work? we've had we've got a much better visibility of teaching quality across the school. That's undoubted. We used to do something which was very outdated, really, which was a kind of periodic review of a department, and then you'd go and look at lots of teaching, and it would happen every so often, but it was not accurate, and it was certainly not driving improvement and development in teaching. We've been able to connect our professional development more directly to the school improvement priorities. So it's number one priority for all of our teachers in the school. So that's helped us enormously. Staff progress is captured over time now, rather than just in the one-off snapshot that I've just given an explanation of, or a description of what we used to do. And so the system itself actually has helped us because it automatically links those records together, and that's something that saved an awful lot of time and effort from teachers and leaders in terms of putting things in one place and not duplicating energy and effort. And finally, we moved from a set of individual actions to something, I guess, that's much more like a connected system. So what we've learned overall then. But it's important to say that hasn't been a quick or straightforward process. Our journey with SchoolIP has been gradual, and our journey in teaching and learning in general, of course, has been longer than just this 2 years. But in terms of the SchoolIP, we initially did use it as a way to hold appraisal information because it was accessible, it was web-based. Prior to that, we had pieces of paper, or we used Sims, and not only was our appraisal not particularly effective, it was one of those things where you kind of tend to do it once and then you put it away and you pick it up at the end of the year, which was unhelpful to school improvement. It's only over time, I suppose, that we've developed how we could use it to capture the teaching quality and the progress more effectively. Honestly, my first instinct was to use an Excel type tracking system, which I've seen used in other schools. And it was only afterwards, when I was thinking about the appraisal and if there was a way to connect it, that I looked more closely into SchoolIP and being able to get support from them to work out how those two things can fit together. And it's well designed for that. We have refined our use of SchoolIP continually in response to the changing needs that we've had and through our own evaluation and what we've noticed when we've been working on our implementation of this year. And I suppose the big area still in terms of further development for us, though, is that report section that I just showed you. That's nice for getting a snapshot of what's happening maybe in a week or 2 weeks, but what it doesn't do is give me an overall view of the school in one place, and so that I could sort of gauge where we need to intervene more, where we need to put more support in. It's not very visible. I've got to do a lot of digging into that data to try and identify that. So that's our next challenge, is making a simplified way of that, and I'm currently exploring how to do that. Maybe SchoolIP's got a way of doing it. Maybe Andy, I could have a word with the developers and see if we can find something that suits us all. So key takeaways from me today is, if I was to summarize, I'd say SchoolIP, again, I'm kind of focusing a lot on that, but I've come at it with it from this angle of how that's helped us to do these things. And it's been a great bit of work that we've done. But it's not just a tool in of its own right. What it's done is it's helped us to connect the strategy and the classroom practice and the professional development all in one place. And I think that's been the key for us. It's very much a continuing journey, but it is helping us move towards greater consistency and clear insight into our teaching and learning journey. So we do know where we're making a difference. We do know where we've still got work to do. And we do know that fundamentally the teaching on a day-to-day basis is significantly better than it was a year ago, and 2 years before that, and 3 years before that, and it will continue to improve as we move forwards. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that's been a little interesting, and maybe if there's any questions, I'll be very happy to take them.
Thank you, Liam. And like he says, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat now. Normally, Andy has some questions that he's written down as well, so I'm sure he'd like to jump in at this point while you get typing.
Oh, thank you, Liam. Thank you both Liams for that. That was very detailed about the journey that you've been on. And I think one of the things that you mentioned, which I think is key in many schools, is consistency. And obviously that's something that you've addressed moving forward, about a more consistent approach, everyone understanding, I suppose, if you want to put it, the rules of the game, because teachers have this tendency to work in isolation. It's only having people come into the classroom, not for accountability, but just to check what's going on. And I'm interested about the journey that your staff and colleagues have been, especially over the number of years, about welcoming visitors into the room. And has the whole culture changed regarding that, Liam?
Yeah, we've I suppose a lot of schools would say we've got an open door culture, and and that's welcome in the classroom. And I think we've always had that. We have people moving in and out of rooms on a regular basis, and so it's not uncommon and it's not unusual. So therefore, it wasn't a huge hurdle to get over the sort of the threshold of the door, if that, in that way. But the difficulty is probably getting effective feedback into people is the bigger part of it. That's the more challenging part, because you got some colleagues feel confident in doing it, and do it well, and know what they're looking for, and have experience in it. Others don't. And then there's the other side of it, is how experienced and open to receiving the feedback that people are as well. So we put a lot of training in at the start of this whole process, in kind of exploring that. We opened it up. We said, look, how do you give feedback? How do you receive feedback? As I showed in the process there as well, ours is actually it's fairly brief, written feedback that people get in the main. There are lots of occasions where follow-up conversations happen and people are in corridors. Most of the DDIs that we do are done by either the head of department to one of their colleagues that they line manage anyway. So they need to see their performance. You can't effectively line manage somebody if you don't know and you're not able to judge the quality of their work. Or it's somebody like me who line manages a subject or whatever, or a faculty. And I may step in because it's just about capacity. But whenever that's recorded, because SchooliP connects line managers as well, it means that they automatically get a copy of the feedback, so they can see and be alerted on the day that something has happened in their area. They get a message to tell them what the feedback was that they've seen, that's been seen as well. As we move through the year, we rotate a little bit so that everybody gets a chance, if you're a head of faculty, to see everybody in your team for a period of time as well. But of course, there's lots of kind of more casual conversations that will happen, which are spurred on from that teaching. One big thing, Andy, that's a big difference for us, or that's made a big difference, is we've put the TLCs that I mentioned, the training sort of approach that we've taken, using a sort of direct instruction type teaching approach, means that we've been getting people in pairs originally, coaching pairs, and then we started to group them to make slightly bigger teams. But when we were demonstrating this is the technique, this is the method, we were asking people, okay, move off into your group and do it. So you three are the students, you're the teacher, here's the whiteboard. How are you going to say it? What are you going to do? And feedback. And that's quite an awkward feeling for staff, for a lot of staff. Not new staff, actually. New staff seem to do that in ECT training quite broadly now. So if you're pretty new into the profession, that's not an alien concept. But for a lot of our older and more mature staff who've been around a bit longer, they found that quite difficult, some of them at first. That breaks the back of it, Andy, because if you're used to standing up with 3 or 4 teachers in a room where there's loads of people all buzzing around, they're all doing the same thing, then you've taken down all the sort of curtains and you're demystifying the whole process, and everybody's aiming at the same thing anyway. And having a shared sort of sense of what good looks like, what is it that we're aiming towards, means that receiving feedback, doing it, giving feedback is a much more comfortable and open process.
Okay, thank you. I haven't, unless there's anyone else who's got a question as well. I'm waiting to see if anyone else has. The other thing I'm interested in is about those techniques that you were talking, like you're focusing for half terms. I take it that those were more or less focus because of the cycle that you're on, about the feedback that was more or less created. Is that right? So the feedback generated the goals for the following half term, or is it part of an overall picture?
So we started with a very specific plan. We were going to do 2 techniques per term as we moved through the year. We very quickly realized that we were trying to move too quickly, and that staff were going to take longer and students are going to take longer to become proficient in doing a particular technique. And we're also looking at a particular way of doing the technique. So, you know, we're very much holding to fidelity in this, you know, fidelity to the intention of the technique, and not allowing it to sort of drift away into various different approaches or styles or ways to do it. The reason for that is because the students, we're trying to give something that's very samey for our students to understand what it is that's expected from them. And if they've got to then start to interpret the 5 different ways that this one technique's been done across the school, then we're back to square one. So the techniques, we started with a fairly rigid sort of plan. We said, right, the first thing we got to do is make sure that we can if we went back to our model, attention is first. You know, if you look at the cognitive load theory, attention's first. So if the students have not got the levels of attention aren't being attended to the right information in the room, then we've got a problem. So we started with signal, pause, insist. We started with the pinpoint the positive, which is our positive reinforcement approach that we do. It's a reward system, in other words, but a very specific way of doing it. We then moved into the assessment for learning. So, you know, how do we understand what students know? So we then moved into think, pair, share. Well, no, we did. Sorry, go back. We did cold calling and no opt-out questioning. So we chose those 2 first to make sure that we were working on opt-in and engagement in classrooms and full participation. We then moved into think, pair, share, and we're now on show me boards. And we were supposed to have done all of those before Christmas, but but we literally stopped it, and the staff kind of said phew when we said, look, we're stopping this now because, you know, there's too many messages happening. So we simplify it, we break it down, and it's all about cognitive load. So again, we've learned in terms of the development stage to take more time on it, to give people more time to practice, to give people more time to contextualize, to get good at it, feel confident with it before we move ahead.
Okay, so yeah, I'm really interested also about the way that you're engaging the students in it, because we seem to be in education, you know, when I was a head teacher, driven this our content, we've got to put this content, we've got to do this, but actually what you forget is the ability of the students to take on board the content and use it. So you actually, by the sound of it, you know, obviously I'll wait for you to say this, part of the teaching isn't so much about content, it's also your students understanding themselves and understanding how they learn, because as soon as they start to master that, they're actually going to understand the content rather than the teacher traditionally standing at the front of the room giving all this information and saying, why haven't you got it? Is that more or less right?
Well, yeah, but there's 2 things going on in the classroom most often. There's the thing that they're learning and the thing that you want them to do to learn the thing. So is that kind of the how and the what. And in lots of classrooms, our kids are struggling to understand both of those things at once, particularly vulnerable learners, particularly those with special educational needs or who are disadvantaged in some other way. They really do find it difficult to jump from classroom to classroom to classroom. And your classroom is saying this way, and you want me to do this thing, as well as the information I'm trying to understand. The process you want me to follow, I've got to know how to do that too in order to access the information. Otherwise, I've got a big barrier, I've got a big block. What we found was that was the biggest problem we were having probably, and so the biggest reason for all of the techniques is about that. It's about making sure that we have a consistent approach to for all of our students. So we've trained, we started with them the same way. They understand cognitive load theory. Every one of our classrooms has got that image that I showed at the beginning that says this is how we learn, so this is how we teach. Every one of our classrooms has got this huge image on the wall that reminds everybody, and teachers can refer to it when they're talking about your attention isn't here, etc., etc. So it's a visual aid permanently for everybody. We have briefings. We do a ton of things. But again, we work with them on how do you do the techniques. We give them taught lessons on specifically what do you do, what instruction do we give you, how do we do it, and we practice it and make sure. I'm modeling a mini whiteboard right now, by the way, in case you were wondering. So we do all of these things so that when we go into classrooms, the students, that they don't have to worry about the process. They can concentrate on how many wives Henry had or whatever it might be.
No, thank you. I don't know if anyone else has got any questions. Has anyone put anything in the chat there, Liam?
I can't see.
No, not up to now. If it's easier than typing, if anyone has got any questions, feel free to raise your hand. I'm happy to turn your mics on for a moment if you'd like to ask anything. If not, I think Andy's got a couple of slides to go through from our end before the end of the session.
No, as I say, thank you very much, Liam. Obviously, if you haven't got any questions, Liam, it's because you gave such a detailed overview of exactly what's been happening at All Saints Academy. So no, it's been, to me, it's been very comprehensive. We have a few slides to finish because obviously you've been mentioning about SchoolIP and people might find out what actually that is. So if I just share my screen. So obviously there's you, Liam, but SchoolIP here, people ask what it actually is. And it's actually a school improvement platform of which Liam more or less explained that whole journey. And it more or less brings together the idea of appraisal, CPD, observations, quality assurance in a visible and accountable way. And it adapts to your organisation. So we work with the organisation, like we work with All Saints, to create a system that more or less aligns with the vision of what we want. So there isn't a SchoolIP way. And as Liam also mentioned about reducing workload. Our offering as part of package for those that want to follow up is free unlimited support and training. It's bespoke to your setting and it's a trusted education product that's been around for 20 years. And we're built up of a team of people in education. So, for example, my background's been an ex-head teacher, but we've got governors, we've got all kinds of different people on our team. So we're actually evolve our system based upon the needs of our users. So with that, that's more or less. And if you want to find out more, you just get in touch and you can contact Liam on here, or if you've got a phone, you can more or less scan the QR code now. And that way you'll find out more about SchoolIP. So with that, I'll stop sharing now. Okay.